Hey there, YouTube. It's Petey, and today I didn't sleep very well last night. My gears are turning. So more recently, um, I got this 12-inch speaker, which was part of a turntable. So this is half of the turntable assembly. It would there's like these hinges here. You would slide the hinges together, and then it would snap. So. The turntable was not working. There was no spot for a fuse, and I plugged it into the AC and it didn't do anything. There was a couple little plastic microphones, really cool, old looking like 60s microphones with long cable with a 1/4 inch on it, like a crystal mic set, like it's hello, sound like that. So I tested it. It was $19.95 was the price they had on it. And I disconnected the speaker and I managed to find a piece of wire that I connected to a stereo they had there. I put a cassette or a CD in the stereo, played the CD, and then I held the speaker wires onto this 1/4 inch connector on this, what we're looking at. And the speaker sounded good. So I brought it, put the speaker in the cart. I brought it to the manager and I said, "Excuse me, but the turntable's not working." And I said, "I could really use this. I've been looking for something like this for a while." I mean, I've got 12s here, but I was thinking if he'd give me this for like $5-10, I could cut a back panel out, put a back on it, maybe put some of these battery holders, screw 3 sets on the back of it. And then if you look inside of it in here, there's a piece of metal that's bent like this. It screws, there's 2 screw holes and then it comes up and out. So I would move that to the outside, cut a hole for the speaker cable to come out, reduce the speaker cable because it's ridiculously over length. It's like 20 feet long. I really only need it to be 2 feet. And so it would be like the speaker wire holder would be at the middle bottom. And then you would have a couple of battery holders with the wires going internal and then coming out a hole at the top with a 90 2.1 mil DC plug, and have that come up off the top like 4 inches. So if you set an amp on top of it, a chassis of an amp, you could plug in have a 2.1 mil DC plug on the amplifier, and you would have 24 volts to run a Class D amp. So I did that. The speaker sounds really good. I had I guess I'll get up and go grab it if you please excuse me for not being prepared. I had a test amp. This is one of my favorite amps that I've built here, and it runs off of 9 to 24 volts. So I have that speaker set up so I can set this on the top. This is just a little dinky. Like for a live thing, I find myself kind of squinting to read what these are, and it just intimidates me because it's so small and it's like it's gonna, if I pull on the cable, it's gonna get knocked over. It's got a fuse, a DC input. Here's the guitar input and there's an output. So there's no buffer in here, but this circuit is a 3-band EQ that has a big gain boost on it. And see, I got my PV Decade, get my Josh Homme tone. And the master volume here is actually, when you get the amp board, there is a potentiometer that comes on the amp. It's a 103 pot. So that's what, 10K or is it 5? I think it's a 10. I said it was 5. 103 pot. And my wife was like, no, that's a 10. Aren't you glad you tuned in? TPA 3116D2 mono. Yeah, it's a 10K pot. Of course, Sconti was right. So, the ones that I've been using, it has this 10K, and I'm guessing, see, this is right next to the input. So that's like an input volume, but nevertheless, I like having that control when I use one of these amp boards on an amplifier project. My favorite build, and it may not make as much sense to you, but I use a Runoff Groove Tone Mender, which is this 3-band EQ with a bright switch. And here's the gain knob for the Tone Mender, bass, mid-range, treble. And then lastly, we have this as the 10K pot that is actually this trimmer pot on the board of the power amp, which I'm guessing it's just right off of the input connection. So it's not like really a master volume control. It's more like a gain control on the power amp. But I still like having both, and I never run it all the way open. Usually it's like about noon. So that's the amplifier that I like to use on my center channel. More recently, in the past, I built all these different amp solutions, a lot of them. And this year, what we're going to be using is the project I'm working on now. So the idea is to make a bigger one of these that fits on top of that speaker cabinet really nicely. Doesn't wobble, doesn't look like it. If a swift wind comes, it's going to go blowing away. So this is, probably 16, 18 inches wide. And I recently got a bunch of scrap wood that's like, it's got a finish on it. Like there's a layer that they've like glued on. Another layer of like nice fancy wood on the top. It's not artificial. And this is like blondish. So you have to, if you're going to stain it or paint it, you should rough it up with sandpaper. So what I'm going to be doing, I've got some thinner pieces of wood, and I've got some real thin ones that are about like that thin. And I also ordered some 4mm round by 2mm thick rare earth magnets. And my idea was build a rectangular chassis it's as big as the top of the amplifier. Now there's a handle on there, so I do need to put rubber feet and space those where they'll sit without hitting the corner tabs of the amplifier. I don't want to build a jiggle box or a wobble bomb, So it'll be like I'll cut a base and a top because I have two pieces of wood that are similar. And then the base, it's like going to be 46 degrees tomorrow and the day after, so I can shoot primer and then flat black on the bottom. And I've got some stain, some chocolate stain. And maybe I'll try staining the sides and the top. And then I have it's not a road sign, but it's similar. This thing, a car crashed into the sign, and the landlord was like, throw that away. So I wrenched it off of there and I kept the sign. And what I'm going to do is cut a rectangular panel for the front and then paint that, probably prime it, and then maybe I might do it yellow. So then I'll duplicate this with chicken head knobs and space them out a little bit more. Like, the only reason these are so close together, like these pots, they're all wired back into a strip board that is the EQ with the gain. It's a TLO72. Actually, this is a NE5532 chip that's in here, which is a pretty common op amp. It sucks a little bit more juice than the TLO72, and it's supposed to sound a little better, but and like last night, I did a layout. I did some notes here. Like, if you see that, so it'll be on the bottom right, there'll be a fuse. Above that fuse is a big old toggle for the power. Above that is a real nice chrome, like 12 millimeter diameter push button switch. And above that is a two-way toggle. Actually, I think it's a three-way. No, I'm going to use a two-way. And above that is a round, like a 22 millimeter, like a dome light thing. And inside of it, it has a DC voltmeter that goes from 1 to 100 volts. So we've got the switching, the fuse, the power meter, and the switch for there's going to be two power rails inside the amp. There's a 24 volt rail for the power amp, and then there's a 9 volt rail that's going to run the tone mender circuit. On the top left over here, I've got a big old, like a 22 mil green indicator. The big green plastic LED that they're cool. I've used them before. And then on the bottom left is going to be a 1/4 inch input. Above that is a toggle, a little toggle, and then chicken heads, gain, bass, mid-range, treble. Then a nice, like, not a mini toggle and not a giant, but they make medium toggles now, with like a medium bat on the end of it that kind of comes out and flares. And that toggle is going to be the bright switch. So it'll be chicken heads, gain, bass, mid-range, treble, and then that bright. And then next to the bright switch, in between the bright toggle and the power toggle, is going to be a big old master volume knob. That's the layout for this thing. And initially, I was thinking, like, for the top of it, I would do a cutout, like have the top just a chunk out of the top in the back, a rectangle cutout, and build a shelf underneath it, and then have the batteries sitting on that shelf, and have a thinner plate of wood or the sheet metal with the neodymium magnets on there. So you would pop this lid on there, and then you could magnetically just lift the lid off, and underneath there would be a rectangular hole cut on the lid with this shelf with this sitting underneath it. So you could replace the batteries and then pop the lid on. Now I'm looking at it, it's like, I can just as soon mount the battery packs to the back of the amp. They're on the speaker right now. So I'm like, you know what? Just put a 2.1 mil input on it. So that's what I'm going to be working on. I've got to cut this wood either today. I know my neighbor has an infant, and I know that infant is sleeping now. I know the kid wakes up around noon. I don't know. I might go out there and do some rips with the skill saw. It's pretty loud. I'm going to have to do that at some point. You know, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 cuts to build this. And then probably 3 more to do the back panel. So that's 8 cuts to do the wood, at least. Well, see, like I can use the jigsaw on some of the thinner stuff because the back panel is going to be this like 1/4 inch thick wood. So on the back panel, there's going to be a locking 1/4 inch jack output. They've got these ones that come with a metal plate with 2 screw holes, and you have to push in a thing to get the jack out. So I got one of those. I got a couple left over from another amp project or the all-in-one powered mixer that I built. So yeah, on the back, there's going to be that input, the output, the power amp output, and then there's going to be more than likely for the 2.1 mil. I've got these little aluminum plates. They're like about that big. I don't know what these were. If you drive a mile down from where I live, there's this place called Eagle Rock, and it's an industrial park. And there's 2 cabinet companies. There's a medical place. There's a HVAC. There's a computer guy. There's an upholstery. There's a place that makes stationery. So I go there and get scrap wood. That's where all the wood for this project comes from, those dumpsters. And like this paper, it comes like we got paper 20 years ago. There was a dumpster full of this thick, like cardstock paper. And we stocked up. And we've used that our whole life, this nice cardstock paper for grocery lists and projects and bombs. It's nice to have thick paper, you know? So over at Anchor Rock, I need to swing back over there and see if I can get maybe a little. I mean, I've got like just enough to do it. If I had some different pieces, I might prefer to do it a little differently. Right now, there's going to be the side panels are going to go over the top and the bottom. So I'll be running the fasteners through that. And the side panels are kind of skinny. I'm going to be running like drywall screws to hold the aluminum front panel. There'll be probably 6 fasteners on the front and then maybe 1 on each side of like smaller screws. So on the back, it's going to be a thin panel. I'll do that 1/4 inch jack that you screw in with the pair of screws. And then when I was over at Anchor Rock a couple of years ago, I found these samples. They're pieces of aluminum a little smaller than a playing card, and they have all different finishes on them. And they have a hole in one corner, and then there's like when you pull a lamp, it'll have this metal chain. There was a chain holding them together, and there was a stack of this high of these sheets of aluminum. And I got 2 of those. So these were samples of material. And I use those now anytime I'm building something and like there's wood that's kind of too thick, meaning if you've got a jack and the threads to tighten the jack down are shorter, that length of the threads are shorter than the width of the wood, What I'll do is I'll use a stepped drill bit and I'll cut a bigger hole in it. And then in back of it, I'll put one of those plates. It's got one hole in the corner, so you drill out the other corners to run fasteners in. You mark off where the hole is and then center it and then drill another hole to put your jack in. So this way the power jack is countersunk and it looks nice and it works well. So I'll have one of those power connectors in the back that's countersunk. And I mean, I'm building this amp specifically to mate with this speaker. I know in the future I'm going to run it on different other speaker cabinets, so maybe at some point I'll want to do that magnetic, that stupid thing. Or you know what? The other option is that I just unscrew the top, the lid, and take the top off and have the batteries internal. But I almost think the way it is now with the battery packs on the back of the speaker cabinet, as long as we're careful when we transport it, if they break, I'll replace them. It's not that big of a deal. So they're fine how they are. And if I'm going to do this amp on a different speaker, well, I can just grab a 24 volt power supply and plug that into there. I don't have to use the battery pack. So, and that'll make it a lot easier. I won't have to cut that slot out of the top. I won't have to mess with the magnets and cutting another panel, you know. So this'll make it the project a little neater, a little less futzing around. And I'm hopefully if I can do flat black on the base and then do the sides that brown, chocolate brown, the top chocolate brown and the back chocolate brown, and in the front I would do like yellow maybe. But this brown it'll match the speaker cabinet. So I don't know, the speaker grill is like, it's off white. Man, if I could match that tan, that would be the best look. Maybe I'll just go with white, you know? And then that way I can shoot it white and I've got a little label maker and I can print out gain, bass, mid-range, treble, bright, on and cut those stickers and put them right where they would go on the respective controls. So basically the power comes in off the jack, it goes to the front panel to the fuse, comes out of the fuse, goes to the switch, comes out of the switch and splits. One line goes to a 7809 V-Reg little circuit, and I ordered one of those. I've got some here. I ordered one, and there was like $2.75 shipping on it. It's a 99-cent item, and I missed that because I was doing my order at like 1:30 in the morning, and my wife was mad at me because I hadn't eaten my dinner yet. And she's like, "Oh, now you're ordering stuff?" I haven't ordered anything in a long time, and it's not the money. It's not that. It's just that it was 1:30 in the morning and she had work the next day. So I got burned on that, and I hate when that happens. But the power comes in off of the back jack, goes to the fuse, goes to the toggle, splits. And when it comes out of the 9 volts, the 9 and the 24 will run up to the toggle for the voltmeter. And then that line will, running out of that toggle, will run up to the voltmeter. So I have to do double splits. You know, I need one set of the power wires running up to the toggle for the voltmeter, and then the other set, the 9 volt line goes to the preamp, and the 24 volt line goes to the power amp. And coming off of that power amp, I'll run a line up to the LED display, the main power. It's a 24 volt LED. So I'm not sure if I got to run a resistor with that. I guess I'll put one on it and I'll see. It says 24 volts, but that's one of my questions. I could go and look at, I have another one installed. I mean, I don't like them real bright anyway, so maybe I'll just go ahead and try putting a 10K on it and see what it looks like, test it with 24 volts. So with something like this, it's a project that it seems like the brunt of the job is scheming. It's like designing how I'm going to solve all the problems. And once you have the chassis, then that determines like the layout of the front panel. And once you've drilled everything and installed it, then you wire everything up. So I will build the preamp, and where all the wires go to hook into the PCB, I will put these little 90 clips. So I can just tack the wire right onto this clip that comes off the PCB. They're little metal rods that go through the PCB, come up. There's a little plastic stabilizer block, and then they 90 over, and they're only like a centimeter long. So basically when I get the potentiometers in, I will custom cut each wire them to the potentiometer, as long as they need to be, wire them to the potentiometer, and then tack it onto the board, and then remount the potentiometer into the front panel. So basically that's how you do it. Like I will mount the amp, I'll mount the preamp, and then I will run the power. Once the powering is run, usually I'll do the potentiometer and the audio. Once the audio is run, which includes like a real heavy duty wire coming off of the power amp going to the speaker jack, I use really thick wire for that. And I'll use really thick gauge wire for the 24 volt line. Anywhere where that 24 volts is, it's going to be beefy. Even going up to the stupid LED, that it won't be as thick as that's really the wire that I like to use is for those jobs is if you have a computer power supply that's blown, you can cut those wiring harnesses and get a good amount of pretty decent thick wire, and it's all different colors. So that's the wire that I like to use for 12 and 24 volts. If it's a power amp out, I'll use a lamp cord or specifically speaker cable. Like they sell speaker cable for automotive or whatever, And so I've got all kinds of wire here, and I use big Ziploc bags, and I try to fill up a bag with the same type of wire, the same relative gauge. So it'll be like, get me my solid core wire bag. Can you get me the PC power supply, or my thick wire bag? I have one that's called the pedal wire, and that's like 22, 24 gauge wire. So like I said, a project like this, I've built a mind-numbing amount of these types of things. A lot more of them were speaker cabinets where I built everything into the speaker cabinet with a couple of sealed lead acid batteries. So I'm not always making a chassis. That's where this one's a little different. And I have to like really lean into the chassis because that's why I'm rebuilding this, is aesthetics. I don't like the way this looks sitting on top of that chassis. The chassis, here's the chassis, and then there's the amp. It doesn't look like, oh, that's your guitar amp, and it's like way smaller than the speaker. No, I want it to look like what it should look like, you know. Now I got another one here. This thing that I showed you guys, I didn't mention. I just acted like it was perfectly normal. This is a 3-band EQ. It's got 1/4 inch. There's adapters in here, so you can use 1/8. But oh, and there's one of those toggle switches I was telling you about. It's like a bat. So this goes like in between coming out of a mixer and going into the power amp to the PA. Usually on a PA system, there'll be an EQ. They'll have rack mount EQs that are like for the room. That's what this is. And I just, I crank the treble. I put the bass in the mid range at noon and maybe goose the mid a little bit and reduce the bass a little bit, depending on the room. And Bob's your uncle, and that does a real good job with that. And that's, again, I think there might be Burr Brown chips in there, OP2134. But I'm gonna, before I let you guys go, I'm gonna show you another one of these amplifiers that I built. Because it's bragging time for Pete. Oh, I got 2 of them here I can show you. How do you like that? Amps and amps and amps and amps. It's okay, Kitty. I won't get to you. I won't get to you, Kitty. You're a good boy. So let me see. I can probably open this up and get a little bigger view for us. Yeah. So here is a 15x2 fuse on the front, gain, power, 1/8 inch stereo input, and then going in the back, we've got RCA input, 1/4 inch input, 1/4 inch output, and then there's speaker spring terminal. And this has a little folding handle. That's like my favorite feature on this amp. This is a 15x2, so it's not a 24 volt power supply. I think this is like 12 volt 2 amp. It's a TA2024, 12 to 16 volt max. And this is rated at 30 watts. It's 15x2. And that would be like if you had 4 ohm speakers at 16 volts, it would probably be approximately 15. But this is a good little amp. Like if you're gonna have a party and you've got some PA speakers, like little 8s or 10s or 12s, this'll do it. This'll do it. Especially if you pair it up with one of these. If you have the EQ going to boost it. Because that's the thing about these amps. They can take a lot more input than what comes out of a CD Walkman or an MP3 player. There was a lawsuit in early 2000s. Somebody sued. Ow, ow, ow! I hurt my ear. They sued Apple because they said the headphones made them deaf, made it hurt their ears. So all the way across the board, anything with a headphone jack, they've neutered the volume levels. They're not powerful like they used to be. It used to be, if you cranked a headphone jack, it would blow your doors off. And I'm half deaf, so I need that. Anyway, here's another one of my famous amplifiers. This one has the batteries in the back. It's not labeled, so I'm guessing that this is the input and that's the output, or is it stereo? No, this is stereo. These are both outputs. There's 2 fuses. So probably it might be like something weird like, yeah, these these 6 batteries here go to the power amp, and these 3 batteries here go to the BMT P power amp and A. I don't remember what's in this. The reason that I wouldn't want to use this on that is because this is a stereo. This is 50 by 2. And I had a 60 by 2 in here, and that amp board was hissing. It was like, like even if you turned everything down, turn your bass down, whatever, the input gain down, it was like, it was hiss. It was, I was like, I ain't having that. I'm going to get my good old boards, the amp boards that I'm used to that don't hiss. So I would think, because this is for a bass, that this is probably, they sell these harnesses on eBay or Temu or AliExpress. It's called Bass Guitar 3-band equalizer harness. And that could be what this is, with this A would be the 10K pot for the power amp input gain, and this P BMTP, is that presence? Huh. I don't remember building this. I remember that I built it and it did that. And I had to remove the amp board and put another board in it. So it was a bummer, but we've got a pair of 8-inch bass speakers in they're like little cubes with little 8-inch, but they're nasty bass speakers, like big magnets on them. And they were like reduced. They were like blowing them out for $29. So I got 2 of these little cabinets and then this thing, and this sits on top of those 2 cabinets, and it's an awesome little bass rig. So that's one of, I got 2 stereo rack mount 50 by 2, like 100-watt stereo rack mount amps that I built. One has a 3-band EQ that's tailored for bass guitar frequencies. The other EQ is tailored, they're different. The other EQ is, it's a pair of Runoff Groove Tone Mender EQ. And that's what's going into the new one, this project that I've been talking about today. So again, I'm going to have to, I got to make those 8 cuts at some point, put some gloves on, set it up outside. Usually I'll probably run a couple cuts and then run in, because people come out and glare to look like, who's doing that, you know? So if you're smart, you can do a couple cuts, come in, have a Kool-Aid, wipe your brow, dart out there with the board, set it up, do a couple cuts, come back in. And I mean, I've done a lot of like midnight lumberyard stuff here where I'll like set it up in one of the bedrooms that's furthest away from where I think the people in the building are sleeping at like 1 in, and ying, yeehaw, let her rip. My wife really doesn't like when I do that, but and I mean I don't do that all the time. I've done it a couple times. Now it's like I'm really kind of done doing this stuff. I'm supposed to be, you know, like we've got enough stuff here. This center channel amp thing, like I've built, I think there's 4 or 5 center channel amps that I built. One is a spring reverb. It's a Marshall Super Lead 100-watt JFET version of the preamp. It's got a spring reverb. I got another one with a Lay Louie on a switch. With the other end of the switch is a Angry Charlie. I got one where the front end is a Rockman. That amp sounds really good. That Rockman amp, that's the preamp in it. There's a Rockman that you plug into. It comes out of the Rockman, and the Rockman is powered off of these cells. You know, there's no double A's in it. So it's a reissue Rockman. They reissued them a few years ago, and it's not the one with the delay in the chorus. It's just got clean, gritty, and overdrive and lead. There's like, I think it's maybe just 3: clean, gritty, and dirty. And then there's a 3-band EQ and another passive, like clean gain control, and then a master volume. That one has a strip of big 10mm LEDs. That's like a volume meter that lights up on it, and it's got a big Volvo emblem on that amp. And then I've got a Crate practice amp with a 10-inch speaker, and that's it's got a buffer. There's a tone mender, and then the same chip amp like I'm always using, the TPA 3116D2 mono 100-watt. And that amp, like somebody gave it to me, so I gutted it. We cleaned up the speaker. I had to patch it. There was a tear. It's the stock speaker from this old Crate, and this thing was nasty. So I gutted it, and then I spray painted it orange, and then I filled up the inside, the top panel with my electronics, and on the bottom and the back there's the battery holder. So you pop the batteries in there, and there's an option to run a tweeter. If you're going to like run an amp modeler, you can use a bullet tweeter that's mounted in a little speaker box that you can put on top of the amplifier. So there's a crossover internally on a switch. And the thing about that is if you're going to play with turning the crossover switch on and off, you don't do that when the amp is on. You will blow the amp. Anytime you're going to do any goofing around, you got to shut the amp off. And then there's a bass amp that I did with a 12 in a 12 cabinet. That's like an automotive subwoofer. And that's got it's like a clone of the Behringer bass preamp. It's a really good sounding bass. Like the Sansamp, the bass, the circuit is a clone of the bass Sansamp. And that was kind of a bit of a challenge because the board that they sent me, there was mistakes in the instruction PDF. And it screwed me up so bad. So I complained to them and they refunded me. And I immediately bought another version of it and built it, and it worked flawlessly. But the PCB that I got was new, and it didn't have the mistake on the board. So anyway, that one was like, that's a really cool amp. It's got like it's an old Peavey Basic 50, the amp pan. I bolted that to the top of this automotive subwoofer, this 12. And the speaker, it's not an automotive 12. I think it's an EV 12-inch bass. It's a monster bass speaker with a huge magnet. And we got that. It was in Salvation Army for $9 in the box with the warranty card. And I looked that bass speaker up, and some guy was like, I had that bass speaker and I sold it, and I never found a bass speaker that even came close to that. That was the best one I ever had. So apparently it's some great speaker, and I've got it here. It's just that my wife didn't like the chassis. It's big and heavy. When are we going to use that? It's going to break your back. So it's just sitting in this room. But anyway, I've got two that I have 6.5 inch aluminum, half aluminum Hartke. Those are built into little Bose subwoofer boxes, and those amps have 3-band EQs. I have a pair of those that I built, and I got one that's it's a micro amp. It's a Boss Micro Cube that I built into a bigger box with one of those 8-inch Jensen mod speakers. And that's got a Class D, it's like a 60 watt, 30 by 30 amp in it. And that runs off seal lead acid battery. That's a really cool amp. It's a micro cube with 2 8s and a 60 watt amp. It's really cool. And then there's the one that's nuts is this thing called the Capitol. That thing is so cool. I remember spending just an unbelievable amount of time. There was a Craigslist ad for this free stuff, so I went and got all this stuff, and he had this old speaker cabinet, and it said Capitol, like Capitol Records on it, and they had written $15 on it. They tried to sell it at a garage sale, and nobody bought it. So I got it, and I was working on this thing, and for like 5 weeks. This thing it's AC/DC. It's got everything's built in on it. There's a dual stereo boost. There's a separate amp, 100-watt amp with it's in a chassis where I drilled a hole and the thing is mounted, so you can just turn the knob. Kita, what are you doing? He's gonna wipe out. So it's the Capitol. It's got two 6.5-inch Sony Explode automotive speakers that I was gifted. But there's a Korg Pandora that sits on the top of that. It's all powered off a 12-volt seal lead acid battery. And that thing, it powers my Sustainiac guitar. There's all these 9-volt ports on it to run different effects, external stuff. And then also a 5-volt port to run there's foot switching for the Pandora. I mean, I used to use that. If you see any videos of the family band playing live, that was my amp called the Capitol. That amp is insane. I spent 5 weeks on it. And I remember being inside the chassis working and looking up on the roof. And the guy who I had got it from, he had like an Ozzy shirt on, and his mom came out. She was like, "You like Ozzy?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, you're right, kid." They were like really into WWF, like wrestling. And he was like, you got to take all these comics. He was trying to he had all these old like muscle car magazines, and he was like, that's worth money. And I was like, no, it's not, And he's like, well, you got to take these tires. Like I had to take all this crap. And I went there to get the 210s. He had two 10-inch bass speakers. He was a failed bass player. So I got inside this thing, and I remember curling and looking at the roof of it. I'm working in it, and he had drawn a big penis with jism shooting out of the end of it. And what I wanted to do was go back there because I know where the guy's house is. He's in Bolingbrook. It's some like really bad beat up subdivision on a cul-de-sac. Go back over there with this thing on the roof of the Volvo and come out with my Sustainiac guitar and just hit a harmonic, hit the upper harmonic mode, and just whammy bar on it and just hold it, infinite sustain, 120 decibel stereo coming out of this thing with like a stereo trim and a ping pong delay until he comes out. And then be like, who's the dickhead now? Here's your fucking magazines back. and your tires to boot. But oh man, I couldn't believe that. And I had my wife and kids like, could you go inside this thing and hold this while I'm like, they all saw it. They were all, and my kids were little, you know. So I was the last one to see it, and the fact that he like hit it on the roof on the inside of this thing, and I know he did that because like that Capitol speaker, it had an oval. I removed the baffle. I had to make my own baffle for it. It was really a big project, but anyway, that piece, that Capitol speaker box, that was the only thing out of everything he gave me that might have been worth anything because it was old. It was like from the 50s. It was a really, and I've still got it. This thing, it's got like leather, like tan leather, and it's all stitched up. If you want to see a video, if anybody's watching this, what is it, an hour and 40 minutes? There's video on, it's called the Capitol Amp, and it's on this channel. You could see me talking about it. And I'm not gonna get it and demo it. I haven't powered that thing up. I know it still works. Like I said, there's an AC plug on the back. You plug in AC and the switch goes two ways, AC or DC. I'm sure there's a dead sealed lead acid battery in it. But yeah, I had to get all of these AC wall warts. Every DC thing had to be matched with an AC thing with switching. So it's complicated. And there was external ports for 9-volt to run the sustainer in my guitar, run the active pickups. So the guitar uses a 3-wire XLR cable. It's a whole custom setup that I did. And it like I talked to one guy, he's like, that won't work. You'll get feedback oscillation. And it's like, well, the only time I ran into that was on a high gain patch and when I used a flanger with the high gain and I had the Sustainiac on in harmonic mode. So just don't use the flanger with the high gain patch. I don't really use flanger anyway. I'm not 9 years old. Anyway, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this talk about the amplifiers that I have been building. There's a lot more to it than that. There's a set of 12s, wedge with 12s that have piezo horns. And that's a 50x2 with a built-in seal lead. There's a big TOA 15-inch PA speaker with another 12 with a horn for the drum machine. And then there's my wife's bass amp. There's two 10s, those two 10s in 10-inch speak cabinets with horns for her bass that have a built-in amp in it. So, like I said, I've done this. I've used probably at least a half a different types of front ends, probably more like about 10. And mostly it'll either be the stereo 150x2 or the mono 100 watt, the TPA 3116. That's mostly what I've been using. I got some 7498 stuff. I've tried those and they're good. They're actually a little bit better than the 3116, but I don't run those. I don't ever run them all the way up. I use them about when they're loud at about a third of their power. So this is going to be what I'm working on from here. I'm sure it'll be done in about 2 weeks. Like maybe a little longer because I ordered parts from AliExpress last night or the night before that was. So gotta wait a couple weeks for those to come in. Anyway, you guys, I hope you enjoy your weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Hug your pets is what I always like to say, and peace.